This recording is for Chapter 10, and it's Exercise 3 at the end of the chapter about reading files, and so I'm going to demonstrate how to write to a file and how to read from a file in Raptor. I need a couple of variables to start out, so I'm going to declare those first. One of them will be the variable that I use to actually get my data into a file, and what I'm going to do is just store a series of numbers into a file, and I'm going to set the first number to 1. And the other one's going to be an array called numbers, because once I've got the file created, what I want to do is to open it back up and read the numbers from the file back into the program and display them on the screen. So I'm going to set all the initial values there to 0. So I've got number that I'm going to use to input each of actually, I'm not going to input them, I'm going to generate each of my numbers, and then I have my array. The next thing is to open a file for output, and that's done using a call statement. So I'm going to drag a call statement in here, and it is the redirect command. Redirect, and then underscore, and whether it's input or output. This one is for output, because I'm writing or creating a file, and the argument to the method is the fully qualified path of the file. So it's on the C colon at the root directory that I'm going to put this file, and I'm going to call it number list. Then you close the quotes and you close the argument. Now that redirects anything that I choose to use in the output symbol to that file. So I want to set up a loop that's going to come through, write each number to the file as I generate it. And my loop control variable is going to be, is my number greater than 11? If that is not true, then I want to put the number into the file. So I just use a simple output statement and tell it that number is what I'm writing to that file. Now inside the loop, I also need to increment number so that I'm generating my numbers from 1 to 10. So I want to set number equal to number plus 1. So it's just going to continue looping through there, starting with number 1, and loop through until it's greater than 11. When it's done with the loop, then I need to close my file, and that's done again with a call statement on the no path here, where I'm going to redirect again my output file, but what I'm redirecting it to do is to be false. It's a Boolean function when I use it in this format, and so the argument is false. That says everything that from that point on that goes to output would then be printed in the console window rather than into the file. So I've opened it here and closed it down here. Then I need to declare a variable I, because in the next loop I'm going to actually use I as my subscript for my array. So I want to set variable I, and I could have done this at the top, equal to 1, because remember in Raptor arrays are initialized using the first location, which is 1. So I've set I to 1. And then I need to call and redirect my input this time. So it is the same command, redirect. However, it's input, which says anything coming from the input box will be read from the file. So again, it's the fully qualified path of the file, and I put it on the root directory of the C drive, and I called it number list. Close the quote, close the argument list. So now anything in there that goes through the input symbol is going to actually be read from the file. Now, since the code is very redundant, what I'm going to do is take this block right here and copy it and paste it right under my redirect symbol at the bottom, and then just do a little bit of editing here. First of all, number is not going to be my loop control. My loop control in this loop is going to be I, so I want to edit this and change this so that I is greater than 11. and I'm not putting, but rather I'm getting. So I want to delete that symbol altogether and drag an input symbol down here. And when I edit this one's a little different because Raptor does require me to put a prompt up there, but I don't need it to say anything because I'm not really getting any input from the user. So I'm just enclosing a blank space in a set of quotes. And the variable, of course, is my array numbers. And I'm using I to step through the subscript as it reads it from the file. So because I'm using I, this statement needs to be edited so that instead of number, it is I that's getting 1 added to it every time it comes through the pass. So I equals I plus 1. And that actually will read all of my data from the file. Once I've done that, then I'm ready to close that file again. At this point, it's the same file, but it's being used for input. So on the no path, another call statement where this time I'm going to set the redirect input to false. Or you could use yes or no. So that says that at this point it is being redirected. Any input that I should do in the program will come from a dialog box rather than from the file. So I've closed it down, and the only thing left to do, since I stored all those values that I read back in the program in my number array, is to generate another loop, which again I can copy and print them out. So I'm going to copy the loop structure, paste it here at the bottom, and then edit my loop. So I want to say here that it's I is greater than 11. So I'm just editing the code in the symbol here. I is greater than 11. I do want to put this time, but I don't want to put number, but rather I want to put number sub I for each of my numbers. And I'm not incrementing number again in this loop, I'm incrementing I. So I want to change this to I is equal to I plus 1. Now, the only other thing I need to make sure of is that I has been reset to 1 before I enter this loop. So I need another assignment block, or I could just copy the one I used up here and paste it right here. Now, that should generate, the top loop generates the output file. I've redirected the output to go to the hard drive in a file called number list. I've started number at 1, so it's going to come through here into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when number is greater than 11, it will fall out. Then I'm going to redirect the output to false, meaning I'm closing the file. Then on the second loop, what I'm doing is reading from that file because I've redirected the input to the file number list, reading it back into an array, closing the input file, and then actually printing. So I'll test this now, and it does take a little while for it to run through all of the increments of the loops. But what I've done is to generate these numbers in the first loop again, write it to a file. In the second loop, open up the file, read the numbers back into an array, and then when the array loop finishes processing, step down to the third loop, which actually prints the data from the file on the screen so that you can see the numbers generated. And if I open up here, you can see it looping through as it's actually reading from the file and putting the numbers into the array numbers. Now it's in the output loop, and I've got an error in my final loop because I forgot the S right there. So let me edit that. Spelling errors as usual that cause my mistakes. So now let me clear the screen to be sure we have nothing on it, and then run through it again. Hopefully it will work this time. That was the only error I saw. So it's still in the first loop now, creating the file and writing it to the hard drive. As soon as it drops down to the second loop, I can expand in the pane the numbers array, and you'll actually see each of those values being stored at the appropriate position in the array. And it's now into the numbers array. So as I open that up, you can watch it as it loops through here, putting each of those values in the array. Remember, when it finishes this loop and has pulled everything back from the file into the array, it's going to close the file, start I over at 1, and drop to the third loop where we're actually writing out the values on the console window. And it's now in that loop. Hopefully we will get the numbers displayed on the console screen as soon as it's completed. The actual exercise in the book asks for numbers from 1 to 100, but we would have waited a while for that to generate, so I've just done 1 through 11 actually, and there is the completed array output on the console screen.